Classifying Living Organisms by Mary Walsh. Where do organisms live? The biosphere. There are millions of living things on Earth we already know about. Scientists believe that there are still a large number that haven't been discovered yet. There are many living things around us, such as plants and animals. You know that there are also many living things in the ocean, in the desert, and even in the air. But if you could shrink Earth to the size of an apple, the area where you would find living things would be equivalent to the apple's skin. The part of Earth that can support living things is called the biosphere. All living things and their environments together make up the biosphere. There are many types of environments in the biosphere: oceans, deserts, parks, yards, and even sidewalks in the middle of cities. Scientists have already found nearly 2 million organisms in Earth's biosphere. They name about 10,000 new ones each year, and they think there are still millions more to be discovered. Why are there still so many new types of organisms to be discovered? One reason is the size of our planet. The oceans are very deep, and many areas of land have not been fully explored. Also, some organisms are very tiny and hard to find. Each organism in the biosphere interacts with other organisms and their environment. Each one competes for the resources available. We also play an important role in the environment. Our actions affect the environment and organisms living within it. You might find a piece of bread with mold on it in the kitchen. The bread is part of the environment for a living mold. Living things are alike and different. You can usually recognize a cat, even if it's a different color or size, or has a different kind of fur than another cat. You know a cat when you see one. This is an example of a species. A species is a group of individuals that are similar and can reproduce to make more of themselves. In the chart below, you see an estimated number of known species for different groups of organisms. This chart shows the species that are alive today. Some scientists think that 99% of all species that were ever alive no longer exist. Sometimes living things change. An adaptation is a characteristic that helps an organism survive or reproduce in its environment. Plants and animals whose adaptations fit an environment are more likely to survive than plants and animals whose adaptations do not. For example, giraffes eat leaves, but so do many other animals. The giraffe's long neck is an adaptation that allows it to reach leaves in the tops of trees that many other animals could not reach. Another example is the redwood tree, Sequoia sempervirens. These trees are among the tallest and oldest living things. Redwoods produce a substance called tannin that repels insects, fungi, and many animals that would otherwise eat the tree's bark or leaves. They can also take in more than 2,000 liters of water in a single day. These are just a few of the adaptations that help the redwoods survive in their environment. Many live more than 1,500 years. Sometimes environments change. When they do, plants and animals whose adaptations fit this change are likely to survive. There was a moth in Europe that was a light color until about the 1850s. That was when people started to build factories that sent a lot of black smoke into the air. The smoke would settle on the bark of trees and make them black. The predator of the moths could see the moths easily when they were a light color on black bark. Darker moths were better suited to survive in their environment. Over time, most surviving moths were darker in color. Look at the organisms in these photos. Each one has an adaptation that makes it able to survive in its environment. The hummingbird has a long beak so it can suck up the nectar from inside a flower. The spines of the cactus are actually leaves. Their shape helps the plant to conserve water. The anteater's snout is long, so it can slurp up ants on the ground. The hard shell of this turtle protects its soft body. Classifying organisms in categories. Scientists need a way to talk about the millions of organisms that we know about on Earth. So many years ago, they invented a system to organize them. Imagine that you have just completed washing and folding your clothes, but you need to put them in your dresser or your closet. Right now, socks are mixed in with shirts, and jackets are mixed in with pants. So the first thing you do is group them. You put the things you wear when you go outside in the closet, and things that you wear in the house in the dresser. Things that you wear to bed go in one drawer, and things that you wear during the day go into another. Grouping things according to their similar characteristics is called classification. Scientists also classify living things. Their system of classification is based on the structure of an organism, how it reproduces, and how it feeds. Carolus Linnaeus was a doctor who worked with plants in the 1700s. He divided living things into two groups, or kingdoms, animals and plants. Animals are capable of moving themselves, locomotion, while plants are not. When a plant moves in the wind is moving it. It is not moving by itself. The 6 kingdoms. Since Linnaeus, other scientists have added new groups to classify living things. We now have 6 kingdoms altogether. This has been possible because we now can see things that are not visible to the naked eye. With microscopes, we can see organisms that Linnaeus did not know existed. For example, we now know that bacteria exist. Single-cell organisms that were once the only form of life on Earth. The 6 kingdoms of classification depend on how an organism gets its food, how it reproduces, and the kind of cell wall it has. Each kingdom is divided up into smaller and smaller groups, based on organisms' specific characteristics. The first kingdom, Archaebacteria, is a group of bacteria made up of one cell each, with unusual cell walls. Archaebacteria can live where there is no oxygen. Some live beneath the surface of the earth, where temperatures are very high. Others make natural gas, which we can use to heat our homes. The kingdom Eubacteria includes several different types of bacteria. One type takes nitrogen from the air and fixes it so plants can absorb it. Plants need nitrogen to make their own food. Without these nitrogen-fixing bacteria, many plants and animals would die. Other members of Eubacteria cause diseases such as botulism and tuberculosis. Botulism can occur when food has not been canned properly. It can kill a person. Many of us carry the tuberculosis bacterium around with us, but we are strong enough that it doesn't make us sick. The protist kingdom include many one-celled organisms, such as the amoeba and paramecium. There may be more than 200,000 protists that have only one cell. The protists also include some algae, which can make their own food, and some slime molds. The 6 kingdoms. Archaebacteria. These are the most ancient of all living things on Earth. They can use chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide to create energy. We can find them living in hot springs. Eubacteria. Some of these bacteria cause disease. For example, the Salmonella typhi sometimes comes from fruits and vegetables that are not washed properly. It causes typhoid fever. Another, called Streptococcus, can destroy the enamel on your teeth. Protists. This kingdom includes red, brown, and green algae. Fungi. Fungi lack chlorophyll, so they cannot make their own food. They resemble plants because of their appearance and because they have no locomotion. Plants. The plant kingdom is the most abundant of the 6 kingdoms on earth. Animals. This kingdom includes organisms we normally consider animals, as well as some we might not. Sponges, which live in the ocean, are in this group. Maybe you have been in the woods and seen mushrooms growing. Mushrooms are fungi. The 4th kingdom. These organisms resemble plants, but have no roots, stems, or leaves. Fungi, plural of fungus, have no chlorophyll, so they cannot make their own food. Instead, they have to live on other organisms that can provide food. You have probably seen other types of fungi as well. For example, if you have ever had a piece of bread go bad, it got mold on it. That mold is a type of fungus. Some fungi are very helpful to people. Penicillin, a medicine that fights infection, comes from fungi. We use yeasts to make bread rise and certain other fungi to make cheese. Other fungi are not so helpful to people. For example, one causes athlete's foot. There is another called wheat rust, which is a fungus that can destroy millions of crops. How are plants and animals classified? You are already familiar with many members of the plant kingdom. From the massive redwood trees of California to the flowers you pass on your way to school, there are many types of plants. We find plants everywhere, from sidewalks to parks, to bodies of water. They provide all of what we eat in some way. If we eat animals, they have eaten plants also. Even if an animal eats other animals, the other animals may have eaten some plants. If we don't eat animals for our food, then we eat plants directly. Most plants take the energy from the sun and convert it into food. They do this using chlorophyll, a substance in their cells, through a process called photosynthesis. Plants need sunlight, nutrients, and water to make food. The larger the plant's leaves, the more chlorophyll it has, and the more food it can make. Our Lady's plant collects water around its leaves, so it has water when it needs it. Classifying plants. You know some characteristics that almost all plants have, such as making their own food. Some plants have other characteristics that make them different. One way they are different is how they move water inside. Plants need water to make food. When the plant is very tall, as the redwood tree is, the water and food must travel inside in tubes. These are called vascular plants. There are more than 260,000 species of vascular plants. Some plants must pass water from one cell to the next. These plants have no tubes, so they are called non-vascular plants. You can tell that these plants must be very small, because the plant has no easy way to move the water up or down. There are about 18,000 species of non-vascular plants. Scientists divide vascular plants into 2 groups, those that make seeds and those that don't. You know plants that make seeds. For example, when you cut an apple or an orange, there are seeds inside. These plants are called angiosperms. Many plants that make seeds also produce flowers. Some evergreens make seeds, but don't make flowers. Pine cones hold the seeds the tree produces. These plants are called gymnosperms. There are some plants without seeds, such as ferns. Ferns reproduce through spores and need a humid environment. Plants that have seeds can adapt to drier conditions than most seedless plants. That is why there are few plants without seeds. Ferns and horsetails belong to this group. Classifying animals. The animal kingdom includes many different kinds of organisms. They all have some things in common. They all ingest food, but they get it from somewhere else instead of making it like plants do. All animals have specialized tissues, except for the sponges. For example, most animals have a mouth to chew food and a stomach to digest it. Every living thing in the animal kingdom can also move on its own at some point in its life and can reproduce, usually by mixing cells with another parent. Before we look at subgroups in the animal kingdom, let's see how we might classify things in a vehicles kingdom. We could use a chart like the following. Kingdom, vehicles. Phylum, all vehicles with wheels. Class, vehicles with wheels that are used to transport people. Order, vehicles with two wheels that transport people. Family, small vehicles with two wheels that transport only one person. Genus and species. Street bike. You see that the groups keep getting smaller and smaller. Genus and species. Canis familiaris, the dog that lives in homes with people, is named with both its genus and species. This is a convention that helps to identify any organism. Family, Canidae. This includes various animals related to dogs. A fox belongs to the family of dogs. Order, Carnivore. Carnivores eat animal flesh. They have large, strong teeth with sharp cutting edges. Class, Mammalian. Mammals are warm-blooded animals whose babies drink milk from the mother. Phylum, Chordata. This phylum includes birds, reptiles, fish, and mammals. They have a nerve cord that runs below their back. Kingdom, Animals. This kingdom is made up of all animals, including insects and fish. Classes are not just for school. Now let's look more closely at how scientists classify dogs, using a similar system. Look at the photos below to see what each category stands for. Kingdom, Animals. Phylum, Chordata. Class, Mammalian. Order, Carnivore. Family, Canidae. Genus and species, Canis familiaris. More on animal classification. You saw the word phylum when we were talking about vehicles and dogs. In the animal kingdom, there are about 35 phyla, the plural of phylum. Here are pictures from some of the phyla. Both the bird and the gorilla belong to the same phyla and have backbones. They are called vertebrates. The rest of the animals without a backbone are called invertebrates. More than 90% of the animal species on Earth are invertebrates. Phylum, Arthropoda. Arthropoda is the largest animal phylum. More than 1 million species have been named. The tarantula has legs with joints, a complete digestive tract, and a body with segments. Phylum Mollusca. Most mollusks have a soft body and a foot that they use to get around. The foot sticks out from the shell. Phylum Annelida. This peacock worm lives on the ocean floor. The feathers are tentacles that it uses to catch food. This phylum also includes earthworms. Phylum Chordata. Subphylum Vertebrata. This bird is in the same category as the gorilla, but in a different class. Birds lay eggs, have lungs and feathers, and most have wings that they use to fly. Phylum Chordata. Subphylum Vertebrata. You can see that this gorilla is very different from the bird. The gorilla is in the class that feeds its young milk from the mother's mammary glands. Scientists often need to classify organisms into smaller groups than the kingdom, phylum, or class. Phyla can be divided into classes, and classes can be divided into orders. Orders can be divided into families, and families into genera, the plural of genus, and species. The number of organisms in a classification group decreases as the groups become more specific. As we move from broad groups like kingdom to more specific groups like family and genus, members of the group become fewer but more alike. Animals in the same genus share many characteristics, but only members of the same species can produce offspring. This system of classification allows scientists to classify new organisms as they are discovered, and there are many species yet to be discovered. Perhaps one day you might be lucky enough to find and classify a new species.